Hey, what's going on guys, aarava here, and welcome back to my Let's Talk F1 2018 series here for the car launches ahead of the F1 2018 season. Of course, pre-season testing is starting today, and at the morning of testing, Toro Rosso and Force India have launched their cars. So here is the brand new 2018 Toro Rosso, the STR13, piloted by Pierre Gasly and Brendan Hartley in a similar livery to last year. Of course, last year was the major change of the livery from what they used to have for many, many years to the Red Bull Cola style of livery, and again this year I love it. I love the look of it, and even more so actually I like the little way they added the Honda kind of hybrid little decal on the edge. Actually, I personally like the way they've done that in the red stripe as well, and a very neat looking car, you know, very tightly shaped side pods actually, and a lot of amazing detail in the bargeboard side pod area ahead of the floor. So let's get straight into it then and look at the aero details, but do let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the Toro Rosso, and do you have high hopes of Honda this year or not? Let's see. I personally hope they can make a step forward, hopefully, with Toro Rosso, but we'll get to that a little bit later in the video. But here we go then to the side area and the main area of development ready for this year of the cars. We've done the usual blown out of the exposure to try and get a bit more closer detail here, and you can see straight away a lot of stuff going on in the Toro Rosso compared to what they ended with last year, an evolution of last year, but you know, some really fine details, especially these little teeth here on the very beginning of the entire bargeboard area. You'll see a bit of a better look on aerial shots of just how finely detailed these teeth are, and really nice you know, way to manipulate there as it goes along downstream. But you've got the cutting of drag, the slot gaps, three different elements to the bargeboard area, and then a front kind of lip face which is going to curve the air outwards. So as it comes through, the suspension arm is going to push the air outwards to the edge and to these very nicely sculpted side pods. You can see a nice sculpture from the very top face and then swoops quite aggressively down then, and actually you've got quite a large undercut, which you'll see a little bit better maybe from aerial shots, but really undercuts quite nicely here. And of course, you know, with the Honda engine only powering Toro Rosso, obviously Honda and Toro Rosso can work together as one almost in terms of how they package the car, and they'll obviously have input from each other in terms of how, you know, what's possible with the packaging of the car. And so they've done a really neat job, I feel, in terms of that. If you look a little bit quickly at the halo, they've got that fairing which Toro Rosso and McLaren were kind of one of the only two teams really testing at Abu Dhabi at the very end of the 2017 season. So Toro Rosso have kept that little fairing to try and push air and manipulate air as it goes through from obviously here in the free stream air as it hits the halo, then trying to create a little bit of a vortex as it comes through and trying to maybe push it towards the rear wing and just generally away from the engine inlet, which obviously is going to be quite important for the Honda engine. I'm going to probably keep mentioning that just as a little, you know, funny, sarcastic thing, but I do genuinely hope that Toro Rosso and Honda can have a good partnership. Actually, funnily enough, Honda and Toro Rosso were the first car out on track as the light went green. Actually, testing was delayed, quite funnily enough, by 10 minutes. So, you know, the very first session of 2018 was delayed by 10 minutes. So, yeah, I mean, just cancel everything. Let's just move on to 2019. I mean, come on, lads. We've delayed the first session already. Are we serious? But yeah, no, Toro Rosso were the first car out on track. So I'm hoping they can go well, and we'll see how they do in testing. But yeah, some really nice detailing on the bargeboard area, but a lot of drag cutting. You'll notice, you know, a lot of slots here, but a lot of fine detailing on the front. You've got this also tiny winglet underneath the suspension arm, just trying to, obviously, as the air comes through, if you imagine, you can't obviously see behind the tire, but as the air would come through, this just increases the surface. The air can bounce along a little bit longer as it comes down, and then let it send off as it goes towards the inlet of the side pod or to the rest of these bargeboard areas. Little winglet here to manipulate the air, another surface the air can play with, much like a lot of teams now opting for the winglet across the face at the top of the side pod. But you'll notice here, this is pretty much where my mouse is. This is where around the actual side pod starts. So like a lot of teams, they've pushed back the side pod inlet. It looks like a lot of teams, barring really maybe you would say McLaren and, you know, I'm trying to think of other teams, Force India perhaps, you know, a lot of teams now opting to push the side pod as back as they can to where the actual side impact safety crash structure needs to be. So, you know, other teams like Ferrari, obviously, Williams, Haas, they've gone for even more aggressively doing that. Red Bull as well, even more aggressively pushing it back to around here and kind of having the crash structure a little bit naked and open. But most teams opting to push the side pod back as much as they can. And then you've got these nice detailing on the floor face, little winglets on the floor. And then what you can't see at the moment is they've actually got a huge slot gap on the floor of the Toro Rosso car. Very interesting floor. They've got these 3 different huge arch slot gap ridges on the floor. So probably one of the most intricately detailed floors, actually, of the entire grid on the Toro Rosso car. So very nice stuff. And so we look at an aerial shot here. Now you can get a better sense of the floor and also this undercut I talked about. You can see here the actual side pod just goes underneath this main top part of the engine cover, if you will. So obviously this is more so to do with maybe how they package the engine at the top here. So little bits and bobs of the engine might be here in terms of the way they do that, but a really nice undercut. And in terms of the swooping nature from the top to the bottom here, really nice job, very aggressive. But here you go, the 3 huge slot gap divots, and then this is an entire slot gap essentially on the floor. So very interesting take on it essentially in terms of allowing the air just to pass straight through underneath the car. And so what you can't see at the moment is underneath the floor, I suspect there are a range of little slots and kind of crevices that are going to try and channel air that passes right underneath to the underside of the car towards the diffuser here. But on the top face, you've got these 3 slots. You've got vortex generators just ahead of the rear tire, all in a bit to try and scoop air towards this area of the car between the rear wing and the rear tire, try and create a vacuum seal and try and allow that diffuser to work as well as it can. Here, actually, from this side, you can see it a little bit better. There's that start of the slot gap here, and then you can see through actually the holes of the slot gaps on these 3 elements, and then here right ahead of the rear tire face, trying to create a vortex as it hits the rear tire to allow that to work a little bit better. And then from the top view here, you can just see the actual side pod and barge board area. Again, some nice sculptures working around there. A little winglet that we saw before, trying to increase the surface the air can move through as it goes into the inlet. And then again, the halo little fairing there. Along with the halo fairing, actually, they've got a small little winglet here on the inside face. So this is where the halo joins up on the chassis, and then on the bump, essentially, of the crash structure part around the cockpit side, you've got this tiny little winglet here. So you can see what they're trying to do, you know, obviously trying to get air away from this inlet. They want as much free stream, kind of less turbulent air entering the actual engine inlet and bay for the engine to use. And so any air they're trying to push around here with the fairing, they'll want to also try and either push it to this side of the winglet or this side. So this side will go towards more of this area of the car, towards the rear wing, potentially trying to create an upwash effect on the rear wing, or pushing it downwards and then eventually maybe working its way around to either this side area, which is going to work then the diffuser area and working with the rest of the air coming into the side pod. So really nice little tiny detailing there from Toro Rosso. And I suspect if that's successful for them, they might even try a few more little bits and bobs around the area of the car. Obviously, they can't do too much, but they might try a few others. Interesting to note, nothing going on with the Toro Rosso in terms of the rear end, in terms of no little T-wings or anything like that. They've got the one element attaching to the rear wing. That may be something they look at later. Of course, this area of the car, a little bit sensitive maybe for Toro Rosso with the Honda engine, trying to keep it nice and open, but you might see developments later on in pre-season testing or towards Australia. We've got this different photo of the Toro Rosso from this angle. You can see a little bit better the top edges of the surfaces, and all these surfaces increasing the surface area for the air to actually move across and attach to, as you've got this cutting that will create vortexes on the exit and the trailing edge of these winglets, and also just more of a surface for the air to attach to as they try and pull along the air to the rear end of the car. And you can see again this kind of scoop turn, almost this divot scoop turn bump at the very front of this barge board, trying to maybe channel air as it comes through these little teeth, even as it cuts through in terms of the drag slots, and then tries to scoop it outwards towards the screen almost and around to the very outside edge of the barge board and side pod end plate elements towards then the rear end of the car. If we look at the front end of the car, then Toro Rosso, like Ferrari, have copied what McLaren did last year with the drag slots in the end fence sidewalls of the front nose cone there. And I'm not too surprised about Toro Rosso doing it, because of course McLaren did it with Honda power last year. Now Toro Rosso do it with Honda power. They didn't have this last year, so trying to cut drag and trying to let air also through to allow it, you know, in the corners, as I mentioned in the Ferrari video. The reason they would also do that is in the corners, then if you imagine the air is coming at an angle view, it would go through these slot gaps and would work with channeling underneath this nose cone towards the fairings, towards the winglets over here on downstream of the car, and that would eventually obviously found its way to the barge board and to the side pod inlets. But you can see here again a lot of teeth here, and if we move on to the aerial shot, you'll see here, you can see a lot better now that fine detailing. And like the McLaren, actually, if you go back to the McLaren video and see all the teeth on the undertread of the McLaren, they've kind of gone with that same style, and really nice fine details that, you know, usually would be typical of the top teams, but Toro Rosso, some really nice, classy, finer details on these aero pieces. But here also just circling the very odd connection of the suspension that Toro Rosso have gone with since last season, copying the kind of Mercedes-style concept almost, but Toro Rosso taking it a little bit further, extending the suspension arm and having it connect with this very weird rod system. I'm not a suspension person, but definitely something to note in terms of a unique way at tackling that situation. And if we move to the rear end of the car, you can see here that huge slot gap I talked about there, a lot clearer now in the studio shots for Toro Rosso. So very interesting way to take it in terms of the concept there. S-Start, nothing new. You can see here with the green lines trying to just show you all these little slots, trying to cut, drag, and allow air to pass through to the side of the side pod or into the inlet. And you've got little divots here in the front of the floor trying to just work the air either side of the main end plate of the side pod, and that obviously works its way, trying to create a vortex as it goes towards the rear end. And you can see here from the profiling, actually, pretty nice, neat packaged Toro Rosso, actually, very, very swooping nature as it goes down to the inside. So good work in terms of the two teams, Honda and Toro Rosso, working together. And then to the front wing, just wanted to quickly note, Toro Rosso, just again, like I said, with these little teeth going on here on the actual winglet underneath the car, Toro Rosso going with some nice detailing in the front wing, this kind of Mercedes style. The front wings are more of a flow control device than a downforce producing device, in this era of Formula One for the last couple of years now. And Toro Rosso, more than a couple of other midfield teams, you can really see the sculpture of the front wing trying to push that air to try and create a vortex on this side of the front wheel to try and eventually try and clean out air as it goes downwards. From the side view, you can get a little bit of a better inkling on the studio shots of that really sculpted floor, and then a really nice detailing going on right as it enters the actual the front face of the floor. And you can see the barge wood area. I would suspect, obviously, throughout testing, they'll be adding some elements onto that. If you compare it to other teams, you can see maybe where they're lacking Toro Rosso in terms of the actual complexity of the barge wood areas, but obviously that's to be expected. And I think Toro Rosso have a lot to answer for in terms of, obviously, last year, the very end of last year, they had the issue with they were running out of bits and components for the Renault engine, and so it kind of masked maybe where the car was exactly. And a lot of the times, I mean, I am kind of a favourite of Toro Rosso in terms of like an underdog Red Bull team, so it's been frustrating for me to watch them, start off so well in the season and then drop off quite exponentially at the end. So I don't know, maybe with a Honda power unit, maybe if upgrades come later on with the Honda, I hope for a little bit better, more consistency across the season, but we'll have to see. And obviously the reliability of the Honda is going to be a big factor as well. So that's been the Toro Rosso car then for the 2018 season. A good evolution from last year, and obviously having to rework the back end of the car for the Honda for this year. And obviously they're the first car out on track, so here's hoping that they can go quite smoothly in testing. And as I said, for their sake, I hope it goes well with Honda, because I would like to see Toro Rosso do pretty well. I like to have them as the underdog Red Bull team, as I said, and also with Pierre Gasly in the car as well this year. I hope he can go well with a car underneath him, as well as Brendan Hartley, which is obviously a great story for him to come back into Formula One now as a full-time race driver after what is around 9 years, I think, since the last time he tested a Toro Rosso car or a Red Bull car. So yeah, hopefully it goes well for them, and we'll have to see, of course. But do get subscribed if you are new around here for the Force Indy video coming a little bit later today. And then I do think I'm going to be doing some videos throughout testing to show you some updates, because obviously already teams like Mercedes and Renault have got updates to their cars. The Renault will actually fully unveil the actual car rather than the kind of dummy car they showed in the reveal. So yeah, do get subscribed for that. Let me know what you thought of the Toro Rosso car, livery-wise and the car shape-wise. Do you have much hope for them and Honda this year? Do let me know in the comments below. If you did enjoy the video and found it informative, then hit that like button, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.